Hello, back to another Food Planet Web episode here. So I know Blake mentioned he hadn't seen it, but Dave, have you seen the new Netflix documentary by the woman that does all the microplastics research? Because I've seen her speak in TED Talks and other things many times. She used to be with one of the health departments in the United States, and when she left that job, she continued her investigations and research on microplastics affecting human health and really focused on hormone disruption patterns and inability to conceive in a lot of people, both due to lower sperm count as well as estrogen disruption in especially Western societies with a lot of plastic use. I don't know if you've seen that, but then also there was a study or a publication mentioned around the 19th that talks about, I'm going to just read the short version. In a fascinating animal study, a probiotic strain isolated from kimchi was shown to bind to nanoplastics in the gut, increasing their excretion by double. So we've already talked about in the past the soil microbiome species that they found to consume plastics, and we've known about the ocean species that consumes plastics safely and turns it into organic matter for a few years now. Thoughts?
Yeah, this whole field is really interesting, and the microplastics debate has really brought it to the front. But the most evidence, and going back for many years, are the endocrine disrupting chemicals that are plasticizers. Everybody wants to say, "Hey, my plastic is BPA free," but there's other phthalates and plasticizers that are endocrine disrupting, and we don't know whether they're in our products. And obviously, yeah, that there's particles of microplastics entering our body is problematic. Is now the next level, but I don't think we've really dealt with the chemical properties of these plasticizers, and how common they are in whatever we eat and drink. So yeah, we have a lot of topics here to discuss.
Yeah, my problem, my argument with a lot of people is when they talk about removing plastics, I'm telling them it's already too late. Nanoplastics are in the air, nanoparticle levels. And I said, you're going to have to get rid of all of your synthetic clothing or your recycled clothing, your toothbrushes, your medications, and I go down the whole list, and then they're suddenly like, what? So Dave, do you have any thoughts on microplastics?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm familiar with the non-gut research in microplastic degradation. This falls into a whole category of let's just really narrow the focus to bacteria here, as opposed to maybe some other living organisms that also might have an anti-nano or microplastic. So bacteria actually have been found to be stable in some incredibly hostile environments. And they also have been found to consume things that we didn't think were consumable by a living thing. So when I mean consume, I don't mean they engulf the plastic and they eat it, but they produce certain things that allow that plastic to be transformed in a way that it's no longer plastic, right? It's something else entirely. So we see this in the bacteria that are in microwaves. They're radiation microwave stable. We see the bacteria in Chernobyl, they're radiation stable on the International Space Station. So now we're starting to see what kind of Paul Stamets with his fungal research showed, that certain living species can have an affinity for micro and nanoplastics and degrade them in such a way that they no longer supposedly are an issue. So I don't know where that'll go in the human model, but this 2026 study that you brought up, I just pulled it up, had a look at it. Very interesting. It highlights some of the other known bacteria that are non-kimchi derived that kind of break things down. Lantoplantobacillus plantarum is one of them. That was in the paper. And maybe we put that paper, that 2026 paper that you introduced us to, in the show notes, and then people can, go look at that for themselves. So this is my message arc right here, kind of where I'm going with this framing. It's that it does seem like the world of the microbiome is able to answer our industrial moral bad decisions, but it seems like there's a latent period before, because their time scale is different. This is the most important thing. Like, as a human, I have, say, 100 years or 50 years or whatever it is that I'm blessed with a lifespan, that I can survive in the environment. And I have so much tolerance to be able to survive. Bacteria, that time scale is enhanced substantially based on life cycle and also the rate of reaction in the bacteria. So they're able to adapt faster. It's actually why I think we have a microbiome to begin with.
Yeah.
That's the adaptable layer. And then we cooperate with that adaptation. So great to hear that that research is being done. I appreciate the fact that you're sharing it with us.
Well, this is where I look at bacteria the same as you do, or any microbial level of life, right? I've always looked at microbes ever since my first micro class, where we're watching the development on the petri dish, right? Over a period of hours, even, where I just said, well, they're evolving how many thousands of times faster than us as a whole. We're much more complicated. We have too many more moving parts and pieces in a dynamic continuum. And for all of that to evolve versus the tiny one-celled organisms, huge difference in timeline. And I have been stating for some time, I even argued with, again, with people who claim we'll just eliminate all the plastics. I'm like, well, eliminate what you can, but shouldn't we as researchers be focused on solving the problem, which is we know that several container loads of plastic pellets have been dumped in the ocean by ships that sank and things like that. Only in the last 20 years, there was, I don't know how many millions of pounds that way. We've gotten to the point of where if there's an oil spill, we're using microbes to clean up oil spill in a much safer
I
manner.
think to your point, I think it's important. Like I think your point is important, and that is that there's a balance here between the modern world that has been created and then again what I said, how much volume of plastic we put into the environment. Of course we need to be careful. Of course we don't want to overproduce and just make everything out of plastic. Of course, we want to be plastic conservative, but at the same time, if there are some things that are developing that allow the regeneration cycle in the context of nature to take place, like people forget we're not separate. Plastic being created, nature somehow as a built-in degrader. Nothing lasts forever, really,
Or they'll
right? So
make
it's like
one.
anywhere we look at any time in history, even things that are bad, at some point it gets degraded. Even nuclear waste can be degraded, it seems like, by bacteria. It just might take a really super long time.